Yalla number one, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia assumed command of a multinational task force, CTF Sentinel, that monitors merchant shipping through key strategic maritime choke points in the region. CTF Sentinel is the operational task force for the International Marine Security Construct, an 11-nation international naval partnership. Headquartered in Bahrain, the IMSC, International Maritime Security Construct, was established in September 2019 and promotes collaboration among member nations to deter threats and reassure regional mariners in and around the Strait of Hormuz and Bab el-Mandab. Its operational task force, CTF Sentinel, was established a few months later to patrol maritime activity in the region. Current members include Albania, Bahrain, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Romania, Saudi Arabia, Seychelles, UAE, United Kingdom, and the United States.
With the Seychelles providing the bulk of the security and defense weight to that
I think the Seychelles in this context is equivalent to Ethiopia in the recent BRICS expansion.
And the Seychelles too.
Don't forget
the Seychelles. Yeah. This was cool because I thought that this quote from the UK Royal Navy Commodore Peter Lawton about what's happening here, this quote was good. He said, quote, "I could not think of a finer commander to take the helm of the CTF Sentinel, and it is entirely right that the task force transitions to regional leadership. CTF Sentinel exemplifies the collective power of IMSC's multinational partnerships, and these partnerships will continue to grow under Commodore Al-Lufi's leadership." So this is cool. And Richard, if you have more to add to this, but it just seems significant that Saudi Arabia, regional leader, will be taking command of this regional task force.
100% agreed. I mean, the emphasis on partnership, that term. And, the CTF Sentinel, similar, CENTCOM has a task force 59 that they've stood up. They're standing up, and it's, we've talked about it on the show. It's a whole array of unmanned systems and integrated artificial intelligence. It's got operational hubs in Jordan, Bahrain, but it's intended to be a partnership among these groups, and everybody plays their part. And that's a great way to go about it. I mean, it's good for us. It upgrades and improves local capabilities, regional capabilities, and engages key partners on security issues that mean something to them. It's the right way to approach, security relationships in the region. So this is I like this story.
Yeah. And of course, this is significant too, because one potential friction point between Saudi Arabia and Iran, especially as they are warming and reestablishing relations, joining BRICS together hand in hand, possibly, is the security and trade in this region. And the U.S. government, the Biden administration, said, "Hey, we're gonna beef up some security around here because these ships are getting shaken down, and it's by Iranian ships." So this will be interesting, but yeah, I mean, this is an important transition over to the Saudis, which is cool. Yeah. Okay. Yellow number 2. Sorry, I just kind of powered down there for a second. Yellow number 2, new Saudi Arabia coach Roberto. Let me try this again because I really want to nail this Italian name. New Saudi Arabia coach Roberto Mancini is counting on the recent influx of global stars to the Saudi Pro League to help the local players improve. Cristiano Ronaldo and Ballon d'Or holder Karim Benzema headline the multi-billion-dollar project that the Saudi Pro League has become. Quote, "If you want to get a good player, you've got to pay. It's important that standout players have joined the Saudi League and are paid a lot because they help the players here improve," Mancini said on Monday during his presentation.
My one big thing this week was on the Saudi Pro League. Talked a lot about this. Not much to add. I mean, he's got a challenge. They want to win the Asian Cup this year is in January. They haven't won it in 27 years. There's top teams, Japan, South Korea, Australia, but they'd really like to, so he's setting out, these are some of our goals. And so hopefully, but that's a quick turnaround to mold the team. So anyway, he's got a big task in front of him because you've got rising expectations, within Saudi Arabia. You've got all this fever pitch passion about the acquisitions and the new league and a new year and new investment. And there's a real buzz about Saudi professional football. So, the expectations will be high.
This is like sporting 101. You've been a coach of many sports for your children over the years at all levels. You play better teams to get better. You play with better players to get better in any sport, except for golf, which just can be demoralizing when you play with somebody really good. But you're not really playing against them. It's not really back and forth. There's no offense or defense. It's just whatever. But in sports, you want to get better. You play good teams. You get your butt kicked. You learn from the experience. And that's a little bit about what's happening in the Saudi Pro League. And Mancini's really just saying that, hey, like we've got all these good players in here now. So the local players that are here will get better. Others will come in that are local that will improve the local contingent in the league. Seems to make sense. So I know the Italians are a little upset that he left for Saudi Arabia. I gleaned some headlines and they were passionate, let's just say. So
well, the Saudis have upset a lot of people this transfer season, and more power to them. That's the way it is. And Saudi Arabia has real goals in terms of upgrading the quality of the league and wants to be a top 10 league. It's not now. Some of that, obviously, performance in major cups like the Asian Cup and the World Cup and that sort of thing all contribute to improving the league's ranking.
Yep.
Yellow number 3, Saudi Arabia's Ades International Holding is set to list in Riyadh, a deal expected to be the kingdom's largest initial public offering this year. Ades provides oil and gas drilling and production services in the Middle East and North Africa. The company has grown through acquisitions after the PIF, Public Investment Fund, and its majority owners teamed up to take the business private in 2021. That deal valued the company at about 516 million. The PIF Ades Investments Holding Limited and Zamel Group Investment Limited plan to sell shares in the listing. The offering could raise about $1 billion, according to Bloomberg.
This is cool because really 2 reasons. One, it could be the largest IPO this year in Saudi Arabia, and they waited until later. They were going to do this in the first half of the year and then decided to wait a little bit. So they're going to do this now. But the IPO market has cooled off in Saudi Arabia this year, just kind of in line with the global trend, and they lagged a little bit with that. But less than $900 million has been raised through listings this year in the kingdom, which is an 82% drop from a year ago. So this going on in the fall would be large. And then the other thing that I think this is interesting here, and I think you would agree, is that this is the PIF's playbook. They essentially take companies, invest in them, do some M&A, make them bigger and more valuable, not just because they've acquired companies, but because they've integrated these companies, and then list them, sell them, so this is just and if the IPO is subscribed or oversubscribed, it will be a win for the PIF. So yeah, I mean, this is right down the middle for them.
Yes, 100%. One of the lead stories in today's edition of the Susik Review is the Saudi shift in investment priorities, which is reserves to a 2009 low. So, net foreign assets fell to just over $400 billion, which is, as I said, as low as it's been in 2009. Some of that has to do with reduced, oil revenue, but a lot of it has to do with change investment portfolio and style and priorities. And they're looking for more active, possibly more risky, but, greater return investments. And you got to like this one. I mean, you buy in 2021 at roughly 500 million, you turn around in 2023 and you're going to market at roughly $1 billion. That's a good investment for the PIF. Obviously, Zamel, who's an old line, extremely smart, well-established, holding group in Saudi Arabia, know what they're doing. So everyone's, back to something we talk about a lot of times. This is the beauty of the Saudi bourse, the Tadawul, and how it's grown and how it's matured, is there are exits for this. You can invest in 2021 and turn around and there's a market, to get out 2 years later. That's essentially doubling your money. Lots of good things in this one.
Good stuff. Yellow number 4, White House officials have notified the Israeli government that a possible normalization deal with Saudi Arabia will require them to make, quote, significant concessions, end quote, to the Palestinians. 4 U.S. officials with knowledge of the matter told Axios, which, just interjecting here, has kind of been on fire with the reporting on this issue.
They do
During a visit to Washington last week by Israel's Minister of Strategic Affairs, Ron Dermer, State Secretary Anthony Blinken reportedly told him that Tel Aviv is, quote, misreading the situation, end quote, if it thinks it won't have to make any concessions over the continued abuses against Palestinians and the theft of their land.
I love this, So again, refer to, we've had a couple segments on this. And one of the things that has been mentioned a couple times, and I'm the one who's the culprit in this, is that the penchant and the pride that the Israeli negotiators take in getting something for nothing, and you could see him setting it up here, and I just think this is fascinating messaging. And from the Saudi perspective, they recently named an envoy, for the first envoy of the Palestinian Authority. They have, I guess, the PLO leadership, the Palestinian Authority leadership is coming to Riyadh in the next week or so to sort of say, can we make sure we're plugged in on this and any negotiations? And I just think it's really important messaging to Israel, is that nope, whatever you think's happening here in terms of, if you think it's going to be like the UAE Bahrain, Abraham Accords agreement, where you really just sort of made promises, nothing hard. That's not the case. And for Saudi Arabia to say, all right, we're open to getting back involved in Palestine, this is a big deal. I mean, over the years, Saudi Arabia's, contributed more than $5 billion into Palestinian causes. And this is direct support for Palestinian Authority. But it began cutting back in 2016 because, concerns about incompetence and corruption, and aid, went to zero in 2021 after many years of very generous aid. So, getting right from the Palestinian Authority perspective, getting right with Saudi Arabia, especially in the midst of these negotiations, wherever they are, we don't know where they are, these negotiations, it is important. And I think it's important messaging to Israel that you're not going to walk away with, a handshake and a wave at promises. It's got to be something real if we're going to consider it for real. And I love, by the way, this is especially with the current Israeli politics, and this is like throwing sort of firecrackers into a fire or cherry bombs into a fire. They go off and they cause all sorts of problems because you've got Ron Dermer sort of being told by Anthony Blinken saying, look, I don't know what you're thinking, but something's got to be real if there's going to be any chance for this. And, and then this goes back to the Israel's political community. And you have people saying, oh, no. Dermer says, we just are considering concessions on the nuclear thing, not anything on the Palestinians. And then, Benjamin Netanyahu says, hey, wait a second, we're not even considering anything on nuclear programs for our neighbors. So, it's a really interesting exercise in recognizing that the Israeli politic and the governing body are at odds anyway. They don't agree on anything. I think it's a recognition on the Saudi part that, look, I don't even know, if we do a deal with them, can they even keep it? But then throwing cherry bombs into this fire by saying, look, anything with us has to do something real on Palestine. It sort of smokes things out. And I think it gives you an idea of the reality of this, the possibility of this. But anyway, this is all amazing theater.
I think this one is you, Richard, and also I'm having a mosquito treatment going on here, and I'm trying to keep my mic muted because it's super loud.
Is this 5?
This is 5, yeah.
Yellen number 5. Saudi Arabia is considering bids to build a nuclear power station from countries including China, France, and Russia as the kingdom seeks to sway the U.S. over a sensitive security pact. The kingdom, which is the world's largest oil exporter, has long sought its own civil nuclear capability and has made U.S. assistance with the program a key demand and a potential deal to normalize relationships with Israel. A breakthrough in relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia would be a major diplomatic victory for President Joe Biden, but Washington has balked at Saudi Arabia's demand for there to be no restrictions on enriching its own uranium.
I think this is interesting because this just ties so well into the previous yellow that we just did. But it's like, and sorry if you can hear this, but it's the backpack blower type, so it's just like brrr, like right next to the window. So sorry everybody listening to this. And actually, I don't have too much to add here. I just kind of thought this was an interesting one because there is so much in the air here that it's, you know, you've got Saudi Arabia saying we're gonna kind of watch this play out, but we have our own priorities. We're not going to wait around for two large democracies with a ton of checks and balances going on to figure their things out when we have a domestic priority. So I think this is well within Saudi Arabia's rights. I also feel like this is the U.S. should figure something out if it can, and maybe to get a 1-2-3 agreement. I don't know how it would work, but like this should go to Westinghouse or a U.S. company. We're biased, of course, but I don't know if it's going to happen.
Well, this is one of the devil's in the details, and the Saudis want autonomy over the entire nuclear fuel cycle. We know that. But what's curious about this discussion in the first place is that Saudi Arabia has already narrowed down its final vendors for any. They want to start on two new nuclear projects, and there's no American candidate. I mean, right now it's the China National Nuclear Corporation, South Korea's Korea Electric Power, KEPCO, Russia's Rosatom. How do you pronounce that? Rosatom?
What you're asking me? I'm the guy that butchers everything.
France's EDF. My point is this. Russia's probably out of the picture because of Ukraine. EDF has its own problems. It's really down to the China National Nuclear Corporation and KEPCO, the South Korean nuclear group company. So like I said, unless they want to back it up and put Westinghouse back into the process, which they are no longer in, what are we talking about in U.S. support? Now, the thing that's really interesting here, and one way to get around this is South Korea. So South Korea and KEPCO and Westinghouse are in a dispute. Westinghouse says, for this type of nuclear reactor, KEPCO's use Westinghouse IP, intellectual property and technology. So they've gone to court, and now they've gone to taking it out of litigation and putting it in arbitration, International Chamber of Commerce in Vienna. So it's possible that Westinghouse could lose this, in which case South Korea can move ahead with no legal ramifications. And so, in other words, Saudi Arabia can engage KEPCO, South Korea, in essence, a U.S. sanctioned, U.S. friendly, and the U.S. would be involved in some way, engagement that can allow them to move ahead on the civilian nuclear part without any of the 1-2-3 problems. That may be a misreading of the situation. All I'm saying is as with so many things on the discussion, there's details that have yet to be, cleared out and resolved. And I know I'd like to see us involved with their nuclear program because it's a long-term, highly, it's an intense relationship that extends over decades. And but we'll see. It's very hard to figure out where it might fit or where it might fall. But right now, we don't even have a horse in the race. So it'll be interesting how it turns out.
Yeah, we're definitely hampered. It seems like it might be South Korea. That's totally. I actually have no idea, but like if I were choosing, I'd go with South Korea because they have their stuff together. But I mean, France, a leader in the space too, so it's just interesting.
Well, and the South Korea has done this Baraka nuclear plant in the UAE. It's about finished. I mean, so it's an example here on the ground. Exhibit A. We can do this. We've done it in the region. It's a compelling argument. We don't know what the Westinghouse relationship will be, and also, if there's a Westinghouse relationship, what that triggers in terms of U.S. Requirements, in terms of non-proliferation, and so on.
100%. Yellow number 6, Saudi Arabia's newest airline, Riyadh Air, plans to focus on the niche market for flights to and from the kingdom rather than competing with its Gulf neighbors' vast hubs, its CEO has said in an explanation of its, quote, super aggressive growth plans. Tony Douglas was speaking after the airline in March announced its first aircraft order for at least 39 Boeing 787 wide-body jets with options for 33 more. Riyadh Air is also in talks with the manufacturers for a fleet of narrow-body jets, which Douglas said should allow Riyadh Air to serve more than 100 destinations by the end of the decade.
Yeah, interesting stuff. I mean, his point is that, most of the Qatar, Dubai, their transit locations. And he's saying, we're going to be servicing people who are coming here, and so that's a big bet. It's a big bet. Are there going to be enough people that come there outside of pilgrims who are going to be served primarily by Saudia? I'm sure they do the market surveys and the studies, and they've looked at this, deeply. But that's an interesting distinction. And again, yet another thing that Saudi Arabia has embarked upon that's going to be fun to watch.
And we talked about their livery earlier this year. It just is cool. And they also recently announced a partnership with a Spanish football club, I believe Spain.
That's right.
If not Italy. But anyway, so he's making waves in the news. And this was just an interesting kind of pivot from what everybody thought was going to happen. So pretty interesting.
Good stuff.
Good stuff. Richard, good episode. 101. Look at us just hitting the ground after 100. We didn't take a 2-week break to party. We just headed right back to work. Here we are grinding again with a great conversation this week. Great conversation next week as well, and the weeks after. So thank you to everybody for being here. This is awesome.
Come back. We really enjoy doing this and really appreciate your listening. Yes. And it's a blast to do it with you, Lucian. This is great.
Yes, likewise. This is fun. We'd be probably doing it anyway. Maybe not so formal, but we would be doing it anyway. So thanks to everybody for being here, and we'll see you next week.